thought we were going to do the show.
No data. Why are we not sending any data? What is going on here?
Did I screw it up when I hosted the other day?
No, I think we're live. I don't know.
I'm
We
really
may
blurry.
have to. Okay, now it's saying excellent. Like I said, YouTube has once again changed its layout, and apparently it just takes a minute for it to catch up. So it's saying excellent now. So the first 23 seconds is us rambling, which is always nice. But hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Tonight, episode 83, and we are talking a little bit about food prep and dehydration. So maybe some tips and tricks, some of the things we do, just a general topic. Hey, Gary, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. So, yeah, recently, Ben, you've actually gone out in a little bit of an adventure and you used the dehydrator to take some food along with you. So, what are your thoughts on, basically food prep and dehydration to start off with? I mean, you literally just did it, it's fresh in your mind. What's your, shoot from the hip, what's your initial thoughts?
I mean, to say it's anything but great is it would be wrong, but it's just you do have to think ahead, right? Like you have to kind of know what you're going to do and prep with. So the last couple of trips, we really played with spaghetti squash, ground beef, spaghetti sauce itself, and I mean some of it, the amount it dehydrates down is downright amazing. Like the spaghetti sauce itself, like a full big bottle, for example, fit in a tiny little snack size Ziploc bag. So savings are quite great. The weight savings are massive. The space savings are pretty high. And really, the food came out virtually as good as if it was fresh. We also made jerky. Real easy to do in a dehydrator. And there's so much more I kind of want to try. Now, I mean, I think in some ways you have more experience than me, but I may be wrong on it.
Uh, I have more experience potentially with the common items. I mean, I have heard about doing the spaghetti sauce and stuff, much like you did. I've never tried anything quite eccentric as that. I have dehydrated, like a favorite snack of mine and Mel's is literally dehydrated apple slices. Cut your slices up, rub a little lemon over them, dehydrate them. The lemon is to keep them from turning brown, which honestly doesn't hurt them, just looks bad, honestly. Um, and ginger root. I'm a fan of dehydrated and candied ginger root. I have actually a little ginger root still here that I use for teas and stuff, which is literally just dehydrated ginger root, which I keep in a jar. Uh, Chives, vegetables for soup mixes, mushrooms, things like that. Like the stuff you normally dehydrate. I have done two batches of jerky in the dehydrator, and I used pre-mixed jerky seasonings. I do not recommend them because holy moly, were they salty! Like almost for me, almost unedible salty. I used some of the deer meat I had a couple years ago, made venison jerky, and it was just so bad. Now people at work loved it, but to me it was like chewing on a piece of salt, and it was just too much.
I've actually had pretty good luck with jerky and the system I use, especially like, I don't use a lot of carbs and stuff. Is I use a Zevia pop, so it's sugar free basically, and I soak the meat, like I cut it all up to the end. I soak it in that. I take a handful of the spices I want, usually like a Montreal steak spice, and some hot sauce. I pour in, and I just leave it to marinate in that for at least a day, a few more if I can get it in there, and then just throw it on the dehydrator. Well, keep it in the fridge up until that point. Stir it around a little bit every now and then put it on dehydrator and dehydrate it down. The trick I find with jerky to make it best is to get the right thickness.
Mm.
I tend to like it a little thicker. The wife kind of likes a little bit thinner. Getting that perfect thickness is kind of tricky, but worth.
No, I'm with you. I like a little thicker, a little chewier. You want to know what works really good, or has, in my opinion, and maybe you can weigh in on this yourself. You know those thin marinating steaks they sell at Sobeys? You know, you get like three of them in a pack for $6 or something. They're literally almost like shaved. Those things
Yeah.
there, you can literally take out. Throw your jerky stuff on, cut them into strips, throw them in, and they come out amazing. My 2 cents.
Yeah, so I just because I'm looking for the volume. Like a couple weeks ago when I went, I did up a batch, and the wife picked up a couple fast fry steaks. And honestly, by the time I was done, there was a shockingly little amount there because it does really shrink up the meat. So you think, oh, it's one full steak, it'll be plenty. Well, one full steak is not really much at all when it's dehydrated. It's almost pathetic. We picked up a big roast, and honestly, like when we left, we're only a day in, and the wife was already like, "You didn't make enough." I'm like, "Well, it was a big roast, and we got all of it here." So it's hard to really judge that. The other thing we dehydrated that turned out surprisingly well was just strawberries.
Yes.
The wife sliced up some of those. She dehydrated, and actually, what I've been having it lately in my cereal, or not my cereal, like my version of oatmeal. I'll just take some almond milk, chia seeds, hemp hearts, maybe some flax seeds, and a handful of these dehydrated strawberries. And man, does it leave a nice taste in the whole thing. It gets that strawberry taste, just enough in to add to it. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. Most naturally sweet berries I find dehydrate really well. Now, I think you and I had this conversation before. I've tried tea berries or service berries or sugar berries, whatever they happen to be called. And those, although super sweet, they don't actually dehydrate well because they're much like a grape. You know what I mean? So it takes a really, really, really long time to dehydrate them properly because of the skin. And I just haven't had a whole lot of luck with them. But I imagine if I can figure out how to make that work, they're going to be delicious.
So would just cutting them in half help?
Maybe, but they're really soft. Picture cutting a blueberry in half, and that's kind of what you're going to end up with. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe parafroze them or freeze them. That way they're a little firmer. Then cut them. Then try and dehydrate them. I don't know. I got to try some things. I missed the season this year, unfortunately. By the time I went out, the birds had cleaned them out. So maybe next time. I think I'm going to try learning with blueberries because it's a very similar berry.
Yeah.
And just see how it goes.
Yeah. So yeah, it worked out really good for us. I took enough for easily everyone we took. Cooked up well. The only issue I really had with the whole thing was honestly I could have used a bigger pot. When I started rehydrating and I was adding the water and getting everything right and trying to get it, I filled my pot quite full. I ended up having to do multiple runs to finish the meal out because I only had basically a 1.8 liter pot type deal.
I was just reading some of the comments here. We have Gary, Joshua, and why can't I think of his name? It's right on the tip of my tongue. You just went camping with him from down here.
Chris?
What was it?
Chris?
Chris, yes. I was trying to think of his last name, and for whatever reason, I couldn't get the first name out either. Anyway, we have Chris, Joshua, and Gary with us. They have some comments going there. Just related to the topic here. They were saying, actually, you make a pretty mean spaghetti.
I enjoy it. I'm just trying to get our comments up so I can stay on track.
Okay. So yeah, some of the things I also like to do with the dehydrator, like I said, the fruits and stuff you can kind of dehydrate, mix them with nuts, make your own kind of trail mix, which is a little more natural. I like doing stuff like that. I like making a lot of my snacks dehydrated when I go out in the woods. My solid core meals, I tend to kind of bring stuff along, be it meat and stuff like that. But I'm really trying to take a step back and do much like yourself has and try dehydrating entire meals going in. Because like you said, there's such a savings, not only in size, but weight, which I think you also mentioned there, because you are literally taking all the moisture out of these things. And if you look online, apparently you can basically dehydrate anything. I've seen people dehydrate eggs. I mean, you can buy dehydrated potatoes, so it's very much easy to make your own. The spaghetti sauce, like you said, you can make ready mix soup mixes. If you get like some soup stock, those soup cubes, you break a little of that up and you put in some dehydrated. You don't put that in the dehydrator. You break it up into everything once it's done. Let me be clear about that. But dehydrate like your chives, a few onions, uh, maybe corn kiblets if you're into that kind of thing, carrots, peas, and you can make a literally a ready mix or a ready-made soup mix. Throw in a cup of hot water, boom, you got a nice hot soup, very flavorful. You throw in some pasta, you now have a little more, or throw it into some rice. There's really a lot you can do with it, and the benefit is it stores incredibly well. Once it's dehydrated and dehydrated properly, this stuff stores for an extended period of time compared to the base product. So, like, you take a piece of corn on the cob and you throw it on the counter, how long is it going to be good for? Now, you take that same corn on the cob, you take the corn off the cob, and you dehydrate it. It's good for a long time. You know what I mean? Or peas, or carrots, or apples, blueberries, anything like that. As long, and then once again on top of that, if you're able to vacuum seal it or keep the air out of it again, I mean, you're just adding time and time and time onto how long this stuff will store. If it's dehydrated properly, it doesn't necessarily have to be refrigerated as well as the base product once again. I mean, dehydration, once you get good at it, it's like an amazing skill to have if you do anything in the woods. It doesn't have to be bushcrafting or camping or any of that. If you're just a hunter and you're going out, it's amazing to keep a little thing like that in the bottom of your bag to make it once again a nice hot cup of soup. I'm thinking back to when I used to pick brush. I don't know if anybody knows what that is, but around Christmas time, you literally go into the woods and you pick brush, like fir, and you bundle it or you put it on a stick, depending if you want, second class, first class, and you sell these to places that make wreaths and stuff like that. It was a job I had as a kid, right into when I was a young teenager, and I mean, you're in the woods, it was just a way to make money. But you'd be out there all day, and it's one of those things where you're normally bringing, like, sandwiches and tea. Now you throw a handful of this stuff in with it instead of you can still bring the tea, I guess, but bring a thermos of hot water. You can make your cup of tea and you can make a nice hot soup. Because once again, during this time, it's usually a little colder. It's usually fall, early winter when they start doing this. For some reason, it goes in early. Right up until probably the 1st of December. And just imagine being out in the cold all day. You're not really freezing, but you get that chill and then a nice hot cup of soup. And that's the reward you could have by doing simple things like a little bit of prep and especially with the dehydration.
Yes. And you kind of brought up a point, not necessarily for like the day trip, because you're taking the day trip and you had a thermos. Um, really, you're already carrying the weight. But if you have the stove and a thermos, especially a thermos jar, not like a bottle, if you boil your water up then and pour it in and close it, it gives your food lots of time to rehydrate without having to run a stove for quite a while, just simmering it. So that works out quite well if you're gathering your water inside on site. But yeah, you've hit the big points. I mean, weight savings, bulk savings, which bulk is my bane of existence lately. It seems food lasts longer. I mean, on my first trip, or a day of the trip, I always like to take like a steak or something like that is going to go bad. I have it more or less pre-frozen before I leave, so when I come out, I have something. But then the follow-on days, that's always been trickier. Like, how long do you risk food?
Yeah.
Um, we've talked about eggs in the past, where you get them fresh and basically uncleaned. They're good for, I think it's like up to 4 weeks or something without refrigerating, which is an awesome thing. And if you store them properly, like under flour or under oil, they can actually go significantly longer than that. Air is the bane of an egg, believe it or not. But dehydrating it, that's the next thing I want to try. I want to try dehydrating eggs, because that would be a lot better than fresh eggs, in the fact that the last two trips I've taken, we've gotten fresh free range style eggs, but unfortunately the shells have all broken. Not on every single egg, but we have had broken shells on each trip. So if I can do the scrambled eggs, dehydrate them, and then rehydrate them in the woods, even if it's not 100% quite as good tasting, if everything else you're saving, it's worth it to me. Um,
No, all I was going to say was I have heard, once again, I have not successfully dehydrated eggs or even attempted. It's a lot like powdered eggs when
yeah,
it's all said and done by taste, and it potentially comes out a little wetter because it's real hard to hit that nice fluffy egg. Once you're done again, you tend to have to go a little heavier on the water to make sure it rehydrates and heats up and stuff like that. So you get a little damper, more powdered egg tasting egg, but the trade off is it's still an egg and it lasts for a significant longer time than just the shelled egg, and you don't run that risk of the shell breaking. So, like you said, it's a pretty good trade off in my mind. Um, and there's other stuff you can do with the dehydrator too. Like you said, the jerky. There's if you just want to get into taking some meat in. You can literally make jerky up before you go in. You can take the jerky in. I've broken it up and put it in soup mixes before. It doesn't come out like a nice juicy steak. Don't get me wrong, but it hydrates a little bit, and it's not quite as chewy as a jerky is, and it adds a nice little bit of kick to rice. Like you know me, I always have a cup of rice with some basic chives and stuff in the bottom of my bag. I don't go anywhere without that because worst case I have one good meal, if not two meals, before I'm actually going to start getting hungry. And if you add that in with a little jerky, man, you can last like 3 days on that. You're not going
yeah,
to eat like a king, but you're definitely not going to starve. You're going to have lots of energy. You're going to have lots of well, not lots, but you're going to have enough calories coming in that you can sustain yourself for those 3 days. And if you get in an emergency situation, hopefully help arrives in the first 3 days. Usually it's the first 24 to 48 hours, I think, is when somebody usually finds you statistically.
yes, yeah, um, yeah. So I mean, I think dehydrator is a great tool. I now have two as of this summer. We have one, and prepping for trips, we actually found it wasn't quite sufficient. Um, Maybe because I put it off too long, maybe because I had too big of ambition. But either way, we now have two, so I can run two simultaneously. That makes a big difference for us. Um, because we do want to do the jerky, we do want to do the spaghetti. We are doing some of our ingredients separate. I've been told you can do a lot of the ingredients together, and it's really something that you could uh, play with, experiment with, and just try to figure out what works absolute best for you. And by no means do either of us claim to be a complete expert. And you can get some similar things. Bulk Barn sells soup mixes, like in bulk. You can get bags, and a lot of that is basically dehydrated foods. But the trick is when you're doing your own, you're 100% sure of what you're putting into your food. When you buy from even the Bulk Barn, and I'm not knocking Bulk Barn, it's any better or worse than anyone else, but when you buy something from the store, you're not really 100% sure what the ingredients truly are. They often put preservatives and fillers and add-ins. I mean, it's maybe on the package, but you don't really know to what level or degree. With your own dehydrating, you know the raw foods you put in, so you're a bit more confident in the food and the value that you're taking with you. And someone mentioned it's also a cost savings. Like you can save a lot of money by getting food when it's cheaper, dehydrating it and preserving it for when it's you want it later, and it's not as cheap. So this time of year when harvests and stuff are coming in, if you keep your eye on the market and stuff, you'll see that certain foods go on big time sale, and you can pick up a fair bit for relatively cheap. And you dehydrate it. And what I do is just put it in the fridge or the freezer.
Yeah,
Yeah. Uh,
I'm trying to get our website ready here.
okay.
Because that little thing I was showing you there, if you're wondering what I'm doing here in the background.
Like you froze for a second. I was starting to worry.
No, no, no. I always look like that. That's just me.
Uh,
I was trying to clean it up a little bit, but I think it's above my current capability with this tiny little screen. So it's going to look a little weird, but on the well, we are talking about dehydrators. I was telling Ben just before we came on, if you were interested in picking up a dehydrator or something like that, Walmart right now has one on sale for $39.98, and this is the one I have here. It's the one I started out with, and it's not a bad dehydrator. I think this is much like what you have there too, isn't it, Ben?
this is like my newest one.
Oh, I
Um,
mean, click that one. There you go.
throw Ben away. This is the one, my newest one I got. I picked mine up used. I think I paid probably not far off from that, honestly. It was barely used. I think the lady said she'd used it once, and I'm very happy with it. So, yeah, something like this definitely is going to be able to give you some advantages with the controllable temperature as opposed to my old one. I actually find I'm getting food dehydrated in significantly less time, like even as much as 25 to 50% quicker um, than I was with my old one. And I was fairly happy with my old one. So a tool like this, I mean, you can go a lot more expensive than this. And I have heard that the trays in these eventually do break down.
That's where mine's starting to go now. But I have found secrets to prolong the life in those as well. So, rule number one, never put them in the dishwasher. They are 100% hand washed. Only wash them in lukewarm water. Never put them in hot or cold water, and don't like they're very temperamental to extreme temperature changes, which is why you don't do the dishwasher. That's why you don't do really hot water. I find lukewarm water, give it a scrub with a soft bristle brush,
Yeah.
rinse in lukewarm water, and then just air dry is the best thing. And mine seem to be holding up somewhat okay. And the other thing is, once you're done dehydrating, just shut your dehydrator off and let it cool down on its own before you start peeling it apart. Like I said, mine anyway were very prone to the trays cracking, like you said. The older versions were worse. I contacted the company, told them about the trays breaking apart. They actually did send me out one full replacement set, gave me these instructions, and they have been doing okay. I'm starting to develop some cracks again, but they're still holding up. And like I was telling you, for $40, I'm probably going to go in and get another one. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because when I originally got the first time, I think it was around like $89 or something like that. And we're talking years ago now, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Gary just piped in that, or maybe a few minutes ago, but he said he uses egg granules. And in fact, when I've camped with Gary before, he's mentioned this egg granules, and he finds them quite good. They're not a dehydrated product he purchases. He finds it fairly good. So I did ask him where does he get his, because he says it's relatively cheap. I know he's told me before. Um,
Yes, and
but
like I read the other one there about bulk burn. And sorry, I wasn't 100% tuned in when you were talking about that, but I'm sure you mentioned if you are not a fan of doing the dehydrating yourself, you can basically buy everything from there.
yeah, a lot of the food we can get, that's, because you can, not everyone is into dehydrated. Bulk burn is a good source of getting some of the stuff. Someone else said this. But things like you said, rices, pastas, that's essentially a dehydrated food to begin with, right? It starts off where it's well preserved, it'll last virtually forever. Once you add water, they expand up to the full size. So we're used to the concept of dehydrated food. It's just expanding it to more and more things. Um, I've often looked for some of the stuff like that. You
Hosier
can get
Hill Farms. And apparently
uh,
Amazon usually has it, but COVID's kind of scrapped the supply, which is unfortunately true with a lot of things right now. And I don't think that's getting better anytime soon. I know at my work they just sent out a bunch of emails that there's a whole bunch of new stuff about to hit the hard to find
oh, yeah.
thing. Yeah, because apparently with COVID, I mean, the initial wave is over, but everybody has changed the way they do everything. So a lot of the safety products like gloves, wipes, masks, all that stuff has become such commonplace. They're still having problem keeping up with the supply, which is going to be, it just is what it is. You know what I mean? Until like the world is forever changed, and until we figure out how to run with it, it's just going to be some temporary problems here and there. Just is what it is.
Yeah, and it is unfortunate where we are. We are stuck with what we have though. Um, but you did mention my trip, and I do love talking about my trips. Um, $20 has lasted me 2 seasons and still have quarter left. So it's something to keep out mind of. For I'm going to definitely try and get some of that from hosiery farms. Uh, you're right. I did just come back from a trip, a great trip. Uh, and there's a few things I wanted to say. The leaves are just changing here now, getting quite beautiful. I hear up your way, it's probably not changed as much.
Once again, they are just barely starting. Not 100%. I'm starting to see them on the lower canopy and stuff like that. I noticed a little out the window at work, but not full change yet. You know what I mean? It's just hinting at it. Probably another week, week and a half, it'll start looking nice down here.
Well, yeah, Keji was looking really good. Down towards my cabin's looking pretty good. Even up here by the airport, as I drive to work every morning, I'm finding it quite nice. So, yeah, I'm very excited about this. I figure in about the next week or two, Keji would be almost in the ideal situation. I mean, it's just gorgeous to be out there. And last weekend, the weather was, um, for lack of a better word, amazing. Sunday night, most of us that were there found that the sleeping bags were too much.
Mm.
Like, just couldn't even use them. So it was a great trip. And it's funny because the week before, tested some of my gear and darn near froze it.
Yeah, because there was a couple mornings I was driving to my other job and it was like -4
Yeah,
coming over Mount Tom.
yeah.
So
So there's it's definitely that time of year where the weather can really span quite a range, and it can go right into the zeros and right up into. I mean, we had temperatures that was approaching the 30s in the last few days. So uh, that's a big range. That's like a 35-degree range of temperature that I've seen in the last week or two. And that's a range of being uncomfortably cold to uncomfortably hot. You know what I mean?
no, no, I was just talking to somebody today saying I hate this time of year simply for the extreme weather changes. Right before it actually cools off for good, you know what I mean? Because, as you said, there's like 30-degree temperature differences over the course of a week. I don't like stuff like that. I'd prefer it to get cool, stay cool.
I'm not complaining. I mean, I love that great temperature. I love the fact that the water wasn't like freezing. I love the fact that you could still go around without a ton of clothes on. You could sort of switch it up a bit. If you dress in layers, if you pack properly, it's not really a problem. If it was cold, you'd be carrying as much or more gear anyways. With the warm temperatures, it gives you a chance to get it off.
I
And
can't argue that. I guess it's the
oh,
humidity more I don't like than anything.
and we know humidity is a killer. We've talked about that before. Um, but yeah, no, great. I had a great trip. I really enjoyed it. This trip was canoes. We pulled canoes through quite a bit of Keji, and got to see some lakes that I hadn't seen before, which was pretty exciting. I think we did 10 lakes and 10 portages in basically 3 days, 2 nights. So uh, it's hard to beat that in this trip, if you ask me.
No, it sounded like a good trip. I seen some of the pictures up. Looked like you guys had a fun time. Just well, it's fresh on my mind. Just want to say hey to Chris and Red Bear. Yeah, I'm back, Chris. And Red Bear just mentioned that over his neck of the woods, frost every night. Already putting away his summer sleeping bag and cranking out the winter bag. So I mean, that's not very far off from us either. You know what I mean?
No,
So
no. And I honestly, I've highly debated taking my winter sleeping bag last weekend. And then I'm looking at the forecast and they're calling for temperatures closer to 12 degrees as a low. And I'm like, I don't need a winter sleeping bag for that. I'll stick with the lighter one. And I'm glad I did. I really didn't even need that much. Um, but it is that interesting time of year. And I'm kind of excited to get my other gear out and start doing some of that stuff too. So, um,
but okay, so you did take some dehydrated stuff. What's some of the other food prep you did for a trip like that? Because you were out for more than just one day, so I'm sure there
yeah.
must have been some other food prepping ideas or food prepping things you had done to get ready for that trip.
Um, we do up our own trail mix, simply to sort of control certain ingredients. So, nuts. We found some low sugar chocolate that we threw in it. I take, um, for lack of a better word, like energy or meal replacement bars.
Hmm.
I mean, it's really hard to beat some of those. as a quick and easy thing. And basically, if you're trying to cover some ground, and I mean, our first day in a trip, maybe some people look and say, "Oh, that's an easy day's trip," but I mean, we looked at it. There was quite a few portages. We knew we had to double carry some of them. We had a decent weight on the boats, so figuring it all out, we thought one day would be kind of hard. So I didn't really plan on stopping long and prepping meals and stuff. So something that's quick and easy and to go. My big meals when I'm camping are generally my breakfast because I'm just getting up and most of my gear is there anyway. So I'll do cook. Then you pack up for the day, and I'm traveling. I don't really want to pull everything out in the mid afternoon. And then when you get set up camp, that's when you set your next meal. So, and we're still, I mean, I don't know about you. Every time I go, I always take way too much food. Uh, and that's not unintentional. Like, I mean, me and Chris talked about it. Everyone I camp with, I talked with this. You should always kind of be prepared to do one extra night than you
Mm-hmm.
originally planned. That's kind of a minimum requirement for me. So if you're going out for 2 days, you should be packed for at least three because you don't know what's going to happen when you're out there, and that extra day can make a huge difference. And it may be that extra day you still get it in the same amount of time, but one meal gets ruined for whatever reason. At least then you're not out a meal, or you get wind blown and can't get off the shore on a boat, or you just whatever could happen, and you get delayed by at least a day. At least then you have prepped for that. So that's just my kind of recommendation. Um, I don't know if anyone else noticed this. Maybe I've noticed a very big increase in rodents this year.
Yes. I'm seeing a lot more, and I mean, it's a kind of along the same line here. I'm noticing a lot more raccoons alongside of the road this year.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, I can't go a kilometer without seeing an unfortunate little four-legged, sprawled out ball on the side. And I think it's just been that kind of year. You know what I mean? We kind of had an early spring. It's been warm and humid, just
yeah,
the right kind of breeding conditions, and that surprise cold we got seems to, cause like I said, we did have that little bit of a cold snap there. It kind of drove them all into the get ready for winter mode, and they seem very brazen. I had a squirrel almost come to my house the other day, and most times
yeah.
they won't come around, and I was like literally at the door, and it was eyeing me up like it wanted to get by me to get into the house to see what was in there to eat.
You can ask Chris how close he got to the mouse over the weekend, and it was shockingly so. And kind of like I know we tend to ramble and end up on different topics. Like I really like the idea of a tent setup, but the amount of mice I seen in Keji in the last couple of trips, I kind of really was really pleased I had my hammock and was up off the ground and not having them run around me and stuff. Even in our tent, we had them get in our tent.
Mm-hmm.
They were that brazen, that numerous. We had them under the chairs. We had them basically running over our feet. Uh, Chris may or may not have stepped on one of their tails, and I swear to God, I tried to stamp one down because it came so close to me, and it just provided endless entertainment for everyone to see me dance like that. But Chris caught one at his foot, and it literally just stayed there, like it just froze. He took a stick and just stroked it a couple times, and then lifted his leg, and it just ran off. No harm done to it. Uh,
But I mean, in a
so
situation like that, that just further proves the benefit of dehydrating, because you
yeah,
can air seal that stuff, and hopefully they're not going to try and get into your bags and stuff. Mind you, I'm assuming in a park like that, a lot of them probably have the idea that they get into the bags and stuff. They know there's food there, there's bedding material or whatever, because they are getting trained to the people being in there. But even out in the woods, hopefully it'll deter things like maybe raccoons wandering in, squirrels, mice, potentially a fox, something that may just be looking for a quick meal on its way by. If you can air seal that, you're going to be much
right.
better off than keeping it fresh.
And I mean, we did use the bear bags. Like we tied up our all gear, we hung it out at night. And the fact is, uh, they were numerous enough and brazen enough that for the few hours during the day when we were still in camp, one of them actually did manage to get into one of my bags. And it was interesting that the bags of chips that some people had, like little Ziploc bags of chips and other foods, seem to get left alone. But my cereal that I make for myself, so the chia seeds and hemp hearts and all that, that was the one bag that got chewed open and damaged. So they will go right after grains and like healthy foods, primarily first. So it's as much as you can seal them up, protecting them, put them in hard sided containers and hanging them up where they can't get to definitely does a lot of good. Um, but yeah, um, whatever you can do to get your bulk down and take up less space makes all that easier, right? Easier to put it in a bag and store it out of the way. Easier to get, all your gear in. It means less trips on a kayak trip or a canoe trip. You can get your weight small and light enough. You don't have to take 2 trips. So it does increase your range, your abilities.
Now, one of the meal prep things that you did on our very first camping trip that I really liked, and it was just for the first day, was you cracked your eggs and put in a bottle. That way you would have scrambled eggs the next morning for breakfast. That was a great way of getting them in there without having to worry about the shells being broken in your bag and stuff. I mean, it was a little cooler there, so there was really no worry of them spoiling anyway. And it gave you a nice scrambled egg breakfast that I was incredibly envious about because I was sitting there eating what was it, oatmeal with a handful of nuts in it, which is fine. I don't
And
mind oatmeal.
chocolate bar into it. I remember it.
Well, that's the only way I get some flavor into it because it was so flavorless. I'm smelling your eggs and bacon. That was the other thing because I believe you had brought some Ready Crisp bacon on that one as well and thrown it in the bottom of your GI cup or whatever, or your little pot there. And so there's another hint for anybody listening: is the Ready Crisp bacon amazing to take camping? But anyway, you're over there having bacon and eggs. I'm like looking down at this mush in a cup, and I'm like, the hell did I do wrong on all this? I've been camping wrong my whole life.
I you know me, like I like my food. Like you know, I enjoy flavor. I enjoy food. I don't believe that camping is an excuse to starve yourself or live in less comfort. I believe that that's the time to really kind of embellish and enjoy. And I think Jeremy noticed when he went camping with me, like they had ramen noodles and they were bragging about that, and here I am pulling out like steaks and eggs and like all kinds of more they were
Real
making fun of
food.
it. Sausages and eggs and bacon, and I have all these food. Like, yeah, I don't go into out there to starve. I'm not proving nothing. Like, there's nothing more enjoyable food in the woods, and good food in the woods is just infinitely better.
And I agree. It was one of the lessons from the first time you and I went camping that has stuck with me. And I never went out to starve myself, but I always kind of cut it back. You know what I mean? I was always like, you know what? The plain oatmeal's fine. It's not the greatest, but it's good. It's wholesome. It's going to fill you. It sticks to the ribs. It's good in protein. It's kind of healthy for you. So I'll just take lots of oatmeal. Same as the rice that I always carry. It's like, oh yeah, rice is not bad. It's easy to carry. It's not terrible for you. I carry the brown rice and real rice, not minute rice, if anybody's wondering. And that's fine. And then I started looking at you and I'm like, so all of this just became emergency food. And
uh,
now when I'm going in the woods, the first thing I do is I head to the grocery store and buy some Ready Crisp bacon. Or, any variation of that, be it Compliments or Costco or whatever, you know what I mean? But yeah, it is like the golden pedestal next to deep fried turkey that has to go on most camping trips with me now.
I was gonna say the deep fried turkey will get brought up here, won't it?
It
Uh,
definitely is getting brought up. But
uh,
it just goes to prove, like you said, you can go out there, eat good, and still we were camping. You know what I mean?
yeah.
That really there was no prep involved in that. We literally took an entire turkey, an entire deep frying system camping with us. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of extra weight. It was 100% worth it.
Yeah, it is. It is awesome. There's a ton of other things that you can do to sort of um, cured meats. David mentioned that. I'm pretty sure red bear, however you want to say it. Yeah, I take cured meats. I take sausages, salamis, pepperonis. I know that kielbasa, is it? That
Hmm.
Chris had that, basically like a ham and a stick. All these things are really good because they can go a while without refrigeration. Even if it says keep refrigerated, the reality is they are wrapped in a sealed skin. They are cured with salts and other spices to prevent them from going bad. They're smoked or dried or something. So, fact is, they can go a while. Cheese. I went to a cheese place there by DeBert one time, and they showed us the whole process. They said they don't refrigerate the cheese.
No, but
It's,
most of theirs is dipped in wax, right? So it's air sealed, like you said again.
but you go into Sobeys and Superstore, you can buy little blocks of cheese in wax, and I buy the Baby Bells because they're small and cheap. And by cheap, I mean they're still kind of expensive, but um, there's the bigger ones that you can get. They're probably about like a hockey puck size, maybe a bit thicker. I've also bought those. You pay about $12 for it, but I mean, when I'm in the woods, I spoil myself. I spend a little bit more, and you take that, you can scrape off a little bit and keep it in a Ziploc bag, and I've never had one go bad in a weekend trip or a few day trip.
Nope.
So
I've taken
it,
cheese just in a Ziploc bag without the coating on it and lasted 3 4 days.
oh
It
yeah,
gets a little soft, but it's still very edible.
oh yeah. So all great foods, and I mean, I think that's the point of camping. It's not to see how long you can survive, but how well you can survive when you're out there. I think if you're just surviving, you're not living. So getting out there and pushing your limits, but pushing your limits while like really enjoying yourself by having the good food and having the few luxuries and basically making it feel like you're not surviving out there, you're thriving. You're it's what makes it a real challenge. And I go for that. I mean, I still try to cover the distances. I still like to see the scenery and stuff, but I also want to feel like I'm more than surviving. I'm thriving out there, and that's a great way to I think look at your camping experience. Um, and I got a buddy now that he really wants to get into this. He called it like food porn in the woods. Like when you're camping and doing great foods, uh, it brings it to a whole new level. I mean, there's no other way of putting it. Uh, Being out in the woods, I mean, it's a very we've talked through this. It's almost a spiritual thing for some of us. It's a release for it in the least. Like you have your most stressful week in work. Everything's going like right downhill. Maybe you're in a fight with your significant other. Maybe the kids aren't behaving. It doesn't really matter if you can get out there and spend that night in the woods, and you wake up and the mist is coming through the trees and the leaves are changing and the loon's singing in the background. All that goes away.
It's like a reset button,
Oh
honestly.
yeah, and you come back with a fresh set of views and a fresh feeling, and it's just so much better. Um, and I think it's essential. It's part of the mental health of being out there. Like it's your
And like you said, if you can get a good meal in while you're doing all this, it makes it 100 times better again. And that's
yeah
what I learned from you. Don't just eat what gets you by, which is what I always did. Eat what's going to make you happy. Because, man, does it ever perk up the experience. Like, we were cold and miserable. Not miserable, but we were cold that first time out. And the
yeah.
food, well, your food and my mentality still made that trip. Like, I learned so much from you on that trip just by watching it. It wasn't funny. Like, just a difference of how people do things differently was an interesting aspect of it. You know what I mean? I'd always gone camping by myself, or I'd taken other people with me, but I'd never really gone with anybody that was quite as woods savvy as myself. Like Mel, I don't really count her in because she used to do the exact same thing as me. We just kind of went out. We took the ramen noodles, the oatmeal, that was our hot dogs, the
Yeah.
classic things, and that was our meals. And then I kind of watched you, and I'm like, oh, okay, so now we're gonna up the game a little bit. And now I'm looking at potentially taking the things to bake bread while I'm out. You know what I mean? Like pre-mix
Oh,
everything up into a bag. Add
yeah.
a little bit of water, and you can make like it's not pemmican. It starts with B. I can't remember. Bannock. That's it. You can make like a bannock while you're out there. And
So
no, go ahead.
go to your grocery store. Everyone's going to kill me for this. Go to your local grocery store and look for self rising flour.
Okay.
It's usually near the pastry section of the flour. But I think it might be Brody or Brone or something wrote on. I don't know. It starts with a B. Doesn't matter. Pick up this. It comes in a small, like 1 pound bag. Self-rising flour. Literally add water. You're done.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm at. You know what I mean? I want to try making some bread out there or some
Oh,
doughboys and make kind of a stew.
yeah.
And
No,
that's
I
kind of one of my goals for the if we do our hunting bird hunting outing. That's the idea. Is I want to bring everything to make like a grouse stew, and we can make some doughboys to throw in there. If anybody's wondering what a doughboy is, I'm sure you know what a doughboy is. Do you, Ben? Okay,
yeah.
so a doughboy is basically you make the bread, but you don't bake it. You boil it on top of the stew, and if you've never had one, man, it is delicious. It's almost like a dumpling in a way, but it's not really there's nothing else to describe it other than it's a doughboy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's a huge thing back home.
I knew that's why I knew you'd know what it was. That's
And the other one is toutons, we call them. And it's the same idea. You make your dough and you just fry it in a frying pan.
yep. Thingamajig. Actually, my mother-in-law, Melissa's stepmother, she makes them. It's called thingamajigs, is what she calls it. But that I think I've heard them called what you did before because I had no idea what she was talking about when she first said thingamajigs.
Toutons are the Newfoundland word that I'm familiar with. And I've heard a few other names on it too. But yeah, it's literally fried bread. You mix that with like a little bit of maple syrup, and I mean, it's basically to die for.
Mm-hmm.
Some butter, and it's just melt in your mouth. So good, fried up in lots of butter. Don't worry about your health when you're into it. Like this is
You're gonna
all about
burn those calories off when you're in the woods. Because I mean,
this is
honestly,
all
if you
about mental health, and this is going to cure what ails you. I guarantee it.
like I said, you're out there, you're working hard, you're gonna burn through those trans fats and stuff. As long as you're not eating it every day, don't worry about it. Just enjoy it while you're out there. You're gonna burn it off in your hike in, hike out, setting up camp, whatever. Once again, as long as you're not consuming that like day in, day out, it's not gonna kill you.
No.
Everything in moderation's fine. It's when you tend to go a little overboard that it catches up with you in all the wrong ways.
All calories while camping are free.
Well, you burn a lot of calories just being out there. People don't
You do.
realize that just being outside, where you're not in a house, your body is not stressed. Or sorry, when you're in a house and your body's not stressed, you burn significantly less calories just sitting still than if you're sitting still out in the woods and your body's being stressed. You have that extra wind, you have the elements, the extra sun, stuff like that. That puts your body into, and I say stressed lightly, but it's in a more active mode and it's burning more calories while you're sitting still. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying if you go sit in the woods, you're going to lose weight. We are not talking thousands of calories in the difference here, but you are burning a few more calories just by being outside in the different, like not being sheltered in. You burn more calories in the winter just trying to stay warm than you do in the summer just hanging out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, my cousin actually piped in there. So my grandfather, yeah, he said basically cooked the jigs dinner on a Coleman stove and in a lean-to with my grandmother. So this is not like I'm not a first generation go out there and eat good person. I'm like third or fourth for sure. Like uh, my both my sides of my family. I mean, we spent a lot of time in the woods doing stuff, and uh, it was just the thing in Newfoundland. There's a thing about going for a boil up, and a boil up is going in the woods, boiling up a tea, and having a good meal in the woods. And that could be as little as a sandwich to as much as a big soup or a stew. But it's all about going in the woods, cooking over an open fire, and making a meal. And that is a day's activity. That is something that you would look forward to for weeks. You knew you were doing a boil up. That was like that is the thing to do. So I come by it honestly, if nothing else. Um,
So, two more comments to bring up. We have Carl Mc, McElhenney? I'm sorry, Carl. I know I butchered that. I'm bad at enunciating names. So, we're going to call you Carl. Carl McE. Apparently, we're making him hungry, and he is sitting out in the woods of Mrs. Hippie.
this is
Uh, Not sure he brought enough food for tonight. See, that's what we were just talking about. That was what I always brought too much food, but it was always bland food. And Chris made another good point there. Cornmeal is another good option and affordable. You can make cornbread out in the woods. It's nice and easy. It's delicious. I love cornbread. I
Oh yeah.
absolutely love cornbread. Cornbread and beans. You want a good meal, potentially for when you're by yourself and not camping with other people, because it does have the dietary tract cleansing effect, if you will. May make you gaseous, explosives. But anyway, some baked beans, whatever kind of beans you like. I prefer the beans and molasses and some cornbread. And you just cook that over an open fire. Oh man, there is nothing like eating fresh beans cooked on a campfire with cornbread,
Yeah,
and it's
it
a
is.
nice easy meal.
It's a staple for hundreds and hundreds of people in the woods. I'm just curious about Mississippi. I kind of want to go.
I've been to
Bottled,
Mississippi, never camped in Mississippi.
no, neither have I. Well, I've never even been there, but I would be more than willing to throw a canoe in and figure out what it's like. Uh, but
Bottled moose cooked in the woods is by far the best meal ever. And you know what? If anybody's wondering what bottled moose is, you can do this process. You can literally can meat.
yeah,
So it's the kind of same idea as pickling. I don't know if he brined his or not. You don't necessarily have to brine it. Basically, you just have to get it in a bottle. You put it in with some hot water and air seal it, and it kind of seals itself. And once it cools down, uh,
yeah.
there's way more to it than what I just explained. Don't think you can just do this and be perfectly safe. Look it up if you're going to attempt it. But that's the quick and dirty off it. And literally, this stuff keeps for quite a while. A buddy of mine used to do it to the point where he would like take it out of the bottle into a pan, add a little bit of flour, and it would make meat and gravy. And it
Oh
was
yeah.
amazing. Like he got the spices and everything in the jar before he went. I don't know if that cuts your preserve time down or increases it. No idea. But anyway, you pour that into the pan, add in a little cornstarch, I guess, and maybe a tiny bit of water, and you'd have like this meat and gravy broth. Oh, it was good too. Add a little bit of rice, and you got yourself one meal that is like stick to the ribs, hearty and delicious. And once again, easy enough to take in the woods. This canned meat we're talking about, or bottled, or whatever you want to call it,
Probably.
it's perfectly fine to take it during the cooler weathers, and it doesn't necessarily have to be refrigerated. You have to keep it somewhat cool. I wouldn't take it out on a 32-degree weather and leave it on a rock. But I mean, if you can keep it somewhat cool, it does keep fairly well. So like when you're down around that 4 or 5 degree area, perfect meal to take out if you can get it canned up. Good time to take the ready rise flour, as you said. Make some bread while you're cooking this up. Add a little whatever into the meats, your rice, your potato if you want. A baked potato, or sorry, a potato is a good thing to take when you're cooking too. I forgot to mention this earlier. You can literally take a standard potato, poke a few holes in it, bury it in the coals, and it will bake itself. The skin
Oh
comes
yeah.
out a little crispy, but I mean, honestly, if you break it open, you can eat the potato out of the inside, and it is just as delicious as cooking it in a barbecue or anywhere else you're going to get a baked potato. It is great. So yeah, throw a bag of potato. I mean, a little heavy. That's the only problem with potatoes, both in your stomach as well as physically heavy to carry around. But also something that's very excellent cooked on an open fire. I don't know, it adds a smoky flavor to the potato that is just absolutely to die for.
So there's a bit of a correction in my earlier story. Apparently, my grandfather made the stove out of a Coleman can, not a Coleman, like the fuel can. He just made a
Oh, there
stove
you
out.
go.
So, um,
Perfect weather to come.
yeah,
So Mississippi this time of year probably would just be about the perfect weather. It shouldn't be too humid, shouldn't be too hot, should just be nice.
maybe we should go to Mississippi.
So what's Chris saying here? The one thing that I find constant chore is food prep. Is water. I only take 1 liter of water and fill my bottle, and it's constant. So yeah, water. Just to touch on that a little bit, we have talked about the Sawyer Minis, and if you
Yeah.
have a good water source by you, and you can get one of those water bladders, 2 liter water bladder, dunk her in the water, jam your Sawyer Mini into the line, and just let it gravity feed down into your stuff. It's a good way to keep water flowing. I tried using the bag included with the Sawyer Mini, and Ben can attest that it almost drove me absolutely insane. Because it took like what, 5 to 7 bags to make 1 liter of water when it was all said and done. we're not talking a lot of water with the bag that comes included in it. So buy the
Well,
Sawyer Mini for the Mini, not the bag.
you struggle getting your bags filled because they have a tiny little hole, and unless you have like a good stream of water, it's difficult. Yeah, so I use the hydration bag, but it's stuck inside in a gravity feed, and I find that works great for me. I'm really pleased with it. The downside to that one, say you're kayaking or canoeing, is while you're underwater, it's not really easy to hang it up. It's not like you have a tree in the middle of your canoe or kayak to hang from. So my wife has now purchased for herself, and I kind of regret having her not order more, is some Life water bottles that have a filter built in the cover.
Just keep chatting. I'll be right back.
Um, so she's going to fill those up while in the water and just drink straight from those. So that's a good system.
Uh, Now, when you mentioned that to me before, I was trying to find this to show you, and it's much the same kind of idea.
Yeah,
It is a bottle that has the whole filter system built right into it.
yeah,
So, and this has a
yeah.
carbon filter in it as well, which will. This is. I think this is the same one Chris was talking about. Where's it at? Yeah, Katadin or whatever the heck it is. Anyway,
Yeah.
somewhere in there.
Yeah. So the wife liked the Life Straw water bottle because her friend had one, and she did find it great for when she's in the water. Just fill it up and drink from it and keep on going. So she's bought one. I think that's not a bad option. There's a lot to
No.
consider here. You have like 18 different water systems, but it's we've said here before: one is none, two is one. Having two different ways of purifying and cleaning water while you're out there is not a bad idea in case one of them fails. Um, so that's yeah.
So, Red Bear, just when we were talking about bottled or canned moose, his 2 second recipe, once again, do your research before you do any of this. Cubed moose, oh, here we
You,
go. Cubed moose in a bottle, little water with salt and pepper, boiled in a pressure cooker for 15 minutes at a boil, and you don't have to refrigerate. He's kept them in
yeah,
the cupboard for over a year. And that's what I mean. As long as it doesn't get ridiculously warm on the outside to start promoting, like the whole reason you can stuff or boil it, you're basically killing any of the bacteria that could potentially grow in there and cause it to ferment and go bad. Uh, and the only danger there is if it wasn't done 100% specific and you get into a little bit warmer weather, you can kind of reactivate any of that little bacteria that's still working around. That's why I said potentially keep it cool. If you actually do it 100% right and you've been at it for a while, like you said, that stuff keeps in a cupboard perfectly.
yeah. I've actually like a friend of ours gave us a few bottles of it that they didn't even know how old it was. Um, but it was kept in a cool, dark cupboard for well over a year, if not a couple of years. And I've had it for longer than that. And it shows no sign of going bad. I'm just at the point now where I'm nervous that it could have. But the reality is, if no oxygen has gotten to it,
It
it'll
should be
more
all
or less
right.
preserve pretty well indefinitely. The problem is if the seal ever gets damaged, or if you leave it out in the sunlight, it does tend to do some damage to it. The
Mm.
UV breaks it down. But if you keep it in a cool, dark place, it's essentially almost an indefinite storage. I just wouldn't tell you that it's indefinite. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
I mean, you have to use a little common sense with any of this. They used to keep pears, like they'd take peeled pears or apples and submerge them in honey. That
yeah,
was an old method of preserving, and you get candied pears or candied apples, and I mean those kept for the entirety of the winter.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, that's another good thing to take camping. Honestly, is honey. If you like a
yeah.
little bit of sweetness to stuff, honey itself doesn't actually go bad. It's one of the few substances on the planet that I don't think actually
That's
expires in any
exact-
way, shape, or form. It might crystallize. That doesn't mean it's gone bad. That just means it has crystallized. And you can it's perfectly fine to eat it crystallized as well. It has absolutely no harm. All you have to do, I think, is add heat, and it'll on crystallize, and you're good to go again.
yeah. I've often taken a jar of honey, just put it in a thing of boiling water, and leave it for a few minutes, and it'll all go back to clear.
Yep.
and it'll stay that way for quite a while until it just recrystallizes eventually. At some point, you'll see it getting. So no, it lasts quite a while, and it's a great system. So no, it's quite a topic. It's quite a range of things there, I think. But yeah, food prep. Preparing things, pre-preparing meals. We talked about the dehydrators, how we started. We mentioned I always take a little bit extra. I'm trying to learn the definition of a little bit. That's my hard part. But yeah, getting out there and enjoying yourself. Eat well. There's no reason to go out there and starve or eat miserably just to sort of prove a point, because you're not proving a point to anyone. Uh, Plan some good meals. Prep them as much as you can. Have an idea of what you're going to do, and get out there and challenge yourself to eat good while you make these trips. It's going to make all the difference, I think, to these adventures. Everything you do to improve your trip um, improves it. And I mean, a lot of the times we'll talk about trying to lighten your pack and reduce your bulk. Like I've said at the beginning of the show, bulk's my bane right now. Not so much even the weight. I can deal with the weight. It's the size that I hate. But some things are worth the size, some things are worth the weight, and good food, you know, you're going to pack it in, but once you eat it, it's
It's
kind of gone.
significantly lighter to come out.
Yeah. So if, when you calculate an ultra light backpacker's weight, they don't usually calculate the food in. They calculate their base weight and then try to get their food.
Carl, I just want to eat as good as Lone Wolf 902 when I camp. I think that's a dig at you.
Well, I eat better than Lone Wolf.
I was
Lone Wolf
about
is.
to say, Jeremy does not eat as good as Ben. I can tell you that with confidence that Ben eats better than Jeremy does. Jeremy might eat better than me, or at least what I used to pack, but I know he doesn't eat as good as Ben does.
I've seen Jeremy salivate over food I've had.
To be
But
fair,
no,
though, Jeremy does have a good selection of noodles.
yeah,
He has
yeah,
got them sent from all over the place. I mean, if it comes down to noodles, the man's got us beat. That's all there is to it. But when it comes to just eating well, oh, he's a ramen guy. Can't help it. All right, okay, we'll let you off the hook for that.
now I have eaten good with Jeremy too. I've been in there. He's made wings and stuff, and with a honey sauce and a big wok type thing. Like we've had some good meals with Jeremy. Jeremy doesn't starve himself either, and he does plan it, and he likes his fresh foods and stuff. I give him a hard time, but Jeremy does eat well too.
Oh yeah.
I just make fun of him because ramen's not my thing. You know that. Like, that's not the food that you'll never see ramen in my pack.
I don't like the packs. I like the noodle cups. And my guilty pleasure isn't the noodles out of them, it's the broth. The noodles are just there, they're filler. I
Yeah.
enjoy eating the noodles to get them out of the way, and that nice hot sip of broth. I don't know
Yeah.
what it is around a campfire, man. That just warms me in a way that I can't describe, and I can't replicate in any other way.
I mean, you could take just broth, like oxy and stuff, and just
I've
couple those.
tried. I don't know. It's something about the noodle cup.
Uh,
It must be the umami or the MSG or whatever the heck they jam in it. It just hit the perfect like note for me somehow.
oh yeah, no, well,
Maybe it's the starch off the noodles. I don't know, but I'm a sucker for that. If they made like Mr. Noodle broth
yeah,
packets, I would probably buy them individually because the noodles themselves, honestly, they're nothing special. I'm sorry, Carl. I know you're a noodle guy or ramen guy. I'm sorry, Jeremy. I know you're a ramen guy. The noodles themselves are nothing special. It's the broth, in my mind, that comes along.
yeah. But some people love noodles. I know a couple of guys who literally eat just the noodles. They don't even cook them. They'll just pick them up and eat them like chips. To me, it's bland and tasteless. But
Yeah, that's like cardboard. It's
each,
like those. What the heck are they called? The little popcorn
oh yeah, I
things.
know about the yeah, the styrofoam
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Everybody knows what I'm talking about. Everybody's had
uh,
it at one point.
rice biscuits or
I don't know. Rice cakes. Rice
rice cakes.
biscuits, rice cakes, something like that. Yeah, those are something. something else. Anyway, because I know a lot of people that take those camping too.
Huh?
I know a lot of people that take rice cakes camping. Oh yeah, that's my snack. I'm like, that's not a snack. You're torturing yourself, bud. That's fire starter is what that is. But you get the buttered ones; they actually burn pretty good. The butter actually acts as a kind of accelerant, and they'll burn pretty good. Same as a corn chip. Corn chip burns excellent.
Oh, yeah.
Double duty, man. Double duty. You can eat the corn chips. You can burn the corn chips. They burn for a long time.
Oh, yeah. Good to get a fire going.
But anyway, yeah. We kind of got back on a roll there. We did hit a very broad topic. We covered a lot of things. It was just a general discussion. That's all this was meant to be. How about you folks out there? What's some of the stuff you do to prep to get out there and hit the woods or hit the trail, go hunting, go to the camp? I mean, there's 100 different things that meal prep is good for. I mean, just around the house, you can prep meals. The dehydrating. I think Gary right now said he's basically running his non-stop, getting a lot of his produce from his garden ready for winter storage. I mean, there's more to just prep than getting ready for tomorrow's meal. It
Now,
might be getting ready for next month's meal.
now, there's someone who doesn't starve in the woods either. Gary knows how to eat in the woods.
You know, one of these times, I'm just going to say, to heck with it. I'm going to invite all yous camping. You're going to show up. I'm going to take the backhoe out of the woods. We're going to dig a pit. I'm going to put a pig in it. I'm just going to be like, no, we're having a pig roast.
I'm sold. Let's go. Now.
All right.
Now.
Well, it won't be right now, but maybe next year, because I am planning to get a pig. So.
Like, you're going to raise the pig yourself?
Well, I'm not going to raise the pig. I'm going to pay somebody to raise the pig, but I am getting a pig. But I don't have the room to raise a pig. Actually, my father and one of his friends own. Remember that homesteading thing that you and I were talking about? Well, they kind of purchased a piece of property where they're looking to do some homesteading stuff, and they're talking about potentially getting some livestock. And if they do that, then I will be assisting in doing that because it's not too far from me. It's only 15 minutes. And the thing is, if I purchase the animal, I have a place to grow. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah,
do a boar hunt. I wish we could do a boar hunt here. We'd have to go west for that. Coffee is the one must. Fresh ground coffee in a French press is actually delicious. I have no argument with you there. I'm a tea kind of guy. I think, Ben, you're more on the tea side as well.
Oh, yeah.
So,
coffee's another thing you won't find in my pack.
I don't take coffee either. I take tea.
I have a variety of teas now I take, and some of them are absolutely a must now. We have one that tastes just like apple pie for a morning. It's just awesome. We have so many types that are just enjoyable and set the mood and stuff. So I find tea versatile.
Soon as we're done, Ben, I'm going to go take a picture of my tea drawer. No.
No.
Sam and I have gotten together. I had a box of teas that we're not drinking here that I was going to send him, and then COVID rolled around. I didn't really want to send it to him until everything settled down.
Who was
it? What's that?
Sam?
Yeah. Sam's
Wenzel?
a huge tea drinker. Yeah.
Oh.
So that's kind of how we bonded originally at the first thing. I had like 18 different flavors of tea with me. If you ever find it, Ben, look for Blueberry Benelli. That's the name of the tea. Your wife will love it. You'll like it too. It might be a little on the sweet side for you. It was for me. But it is delicious. And it's naturally sweet.
Yeah.
The apple pie drinks are Mississippi Iron tea. I've had apple pie moonshine. That's good too.
Yeah, I've had apple pie moonshine too from Jamie Harris.
Yes. Was that moonshine? Yeah, it was moonshine whiskey, I think is what it was. Anyway, it was great. But
yeah.
And potent.
Anyways, I think we've killed our hour by far.
Oh, yeah, we're at an hour and 10 minutes. But as normal, everybody that was going to leave left.
Yeah.
And anybody that knows our normal rambles has stayed and is laughing to themselves or doing whatever. But yeah, that's definitely our hour. Big, broad subject. We'd love to hear from you guys and what you guys do and any suggestions you have for future topics. And if you want to jump on with us some night, maybe you, Carl, down in Mississippi, you can give us an idea of the way you guys do things down south. I mean, we are not exclusively just Ben and I. We love having people on. We've had Gary on twice now. We got a few other people lined up for future episodes. I mean, Chris is starting to become a regular. We should get Jeremy on here. We love having people on just to chit chat because, as you see, that's what we do. It's a passion
So
of ours. We like to share the passion.
I gotta say this because I definitely suffered from this, and by suffered I mean enjoyed. When we were camping this weekend, we carried canoes and packs for miles. But you know what I think burned the absolute most calories on the trip? Sitting around the fire laughing.
Yes.
Because I tell you, the muscles in the back of my head from laughing were way sore than the muscles in the rest of my body from packing in all that gear and moving those boats. So, the other essential thing for a great trip is great company, great people to hang out with. It just also, just like the food, multiplies the whole experience over and over again. Uh, so, just something I wanted to throw out there.
Can't argue with that.
So far, I see we have to figure out how to go on a boar hunt, go to the Mississippi,
And
do a
pig
pig roast. We're running out of time, buddy. Not just for the show tonight, but things we need to do in the near future.
Oh, that's the beauty of it. But I think that's it for us tonight, unless you had any other thoughts on there, Ben.
No, I'm good to go.
All right. Well, from both Ben and I here at Atlantic Bushcraft, or at least me, I don't know. Ben can have his own say, but at least for me, I hope all these have a good night.
Yeah. Good night, everyone. Get out there, have fun, enjoy yourselves. Tell us about it. Write in. Tell us what you're doing, what you're thinking about. Any good ideas, anything you'd like to see us do or talk about. We'd love to hear from you. But like we said, always say, do it safe, do it right, and don't take any risks you haven't prepped for.
Exactly. And the last little tagline I want to throw on here, which I never even talked to Ben, I was supposed to before we started this episode, was something I'd like to try and weigh in on this, Ben. Picture of the week. If you guys want to do something like Picture of the Week, I'll set up an email address where you just shoot a picture and we will have it at the end of the show and we'll have a quick discussion on it. Just our thoughts, our thanks. We'll mention where you are, where you're coming from. I think that'd be a neat little thing to throw on this. What about you, Ben?
Sure. I know that I'm always going to be the picture of the week because I'm gorgeous, but yeah, if you guys want to throw something in there occasionally, that's cool.
The humbleness. So yeah, maybe starting in a couple weeks, we'll start advertising it now. I'll set up an email address, which will just be like POW, Picture of the Week, at atlanticbushcraft.ca. And yeah, I think that'd be neat. Anyway, have a good night, everybody.
Night all.